activities will be transcribed and will be broadcast on the web TV channel of the Chamber of Deputies. I would also like to remind everyone that remote participation is allowed based on the Rules Committee. Today's activities include the hearing within the broader framework of the fact-finding activities of Italy in the international community for the promotion and protection of human rights and against discrimination is, as I was saying, the hearing of representatives of the Pangea Foundation. And I would like to thank, on behalf of the members of the committee, those present here this morning. We have Ms. Simona Lanzoni, Vice President of Fondazione Pangea. We have Ms. Azada Raz Mohammed in video conference, legal advisor for the campaign. We have Ferozan Nawabi, representative of the Pangea Foundation and former Director General of Human Rights of the Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I would also like to greet Ms. Manuela Campitelli, who's in charge of the communication department of the Pangea Foundation. I would remind all of us that the Pangea Foundation is a non-profit organization active since 2002, working to pursue economic and social development of women, of their families, and of their communities. It acts in line with the cooperation guidelines of the countries in which it operates, of the UN, the EU, and the Council of Europe. It is based on listening, on advisory activities, engaged dialogue, and based on mutual respect. This foundation is structured on activities and programs to develop the opportunities that are offered to the beneficiaries of this program, of this campaign. And today's hearing is focused on the situation on Afghanistan, where there's a systemic violation of human rights, especially the rights of women. Women are denied the opportunity, the right to study, to work, to receive treatment, and to move freely unless they are with a man. And they can no longer, they cannot take part in any public or social aspect of social life. These discriminations are considered a true crime of apartheid towards women. We will be hearing from our guest today about the advocacy campaign for the recognition and classification of such crime that will be presented in October at the United Nations. On a broader level, in August in Afghanistan, a new law has been introduced for the promotion of virtue and prevention of vice in line with the Sharia. And this law sets out a series of prohibitions that are already active, known in the Islamic Emirate, but they represent an additional way to control the population by the Ministry of Propagation of Virtue and Prevention of Vice. Among other things, this new discipline sets out that, and I quote, women must cover their bodies when they are in the presence of men who are not part of their families, as well as their faces. They will have to cover their mouths. The voices of women cannot be heard in public, which deprives Afghan women of their fundamental right of freedom of expression. In a statement published on August 26th, the High Representative for the EU Foreign Affairs, Josep Borrell, underscored that these abuses, these systemic abuses against women and Afghan girls, could represent a gender persecution, a crime against humanity, in accordance with the Statute of Rome of the International Criminal Court, of which Afghanistan is a signatory state. According to Borrell, this new legislation is an additional obstacle for the normalization of relations with the international community, and an obstacle in the recognition of public recognition that the Taliban are searching for. In fact, Resolution 2721 of 2023 of the UN Security Council for Taliban, in order to receive this recognition, they have to respect obligations towards Afghan citizens, but also they have to respect international obligations taken on by Afghanistan. Given this background information, I am honored to leave the floor to our guests, and I would kindly ask them to limit their presentations to 20-25 minutes in total. So the floor to you, Ms. Lanzoni. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing in favor of women and Afghan women as well. I would also like to thank the committee, and my name is Simona Lanzoni. I'm Vice President of Pangea Foundation. I lived in Afghanistan many years, and I know, I've seen firsthand what we are talking about today. Why are we talking about gender apartheid? Because we need a legal framework, a legal pathway, so that we can stop the de facto government in Afghanistan, but also prevent all those who are trying to segregate, to limit the rights of women and human rights in general of women in Afghanistan. They must be stopped. So for this reason, this campaign on gender apartheid and a classification, a definition of this crime, gender apartheid, is fundamental. For now, we've only associated apartheid to South Africa, and there are many conventions and resolutions condemning apartheid. Currently, however, our apartheid is a crime that is included in the crimes against humanity under Article 2, and we are asking for a definition, a broader definition of apartheid, which includes gender, because this is the situation that is currently being experienced in Afghanistan. This coding, this classification of this term has been approved by the Secretary General of the UN, Guterres, as well as the UN Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls, the Special Rapporteur on Afghanistan, Mr. Bennett, as well as the Executive Director of UN Women. So we are asking Italy to support all this work that has been going on, even at UN level. We believe that this would be a strong signal, because what is happening in Afghanistan, but not only in Afghanistan, this is happening in other countries as well. What is happening is that 50% of the population is being discriminated. They're being limited in many forms of social life, only and simply because they are women. And this is a way of life. There are very clear rules specifically against women. If there are 125 orders of the Ministry of Propagation of Virtue and Prevention of Vice, more than half are against women. And this attack against women, if we think that this can continue in in this country, and it can keep going for years. This is a way of educating an entire population, going completely in the opposite direction of what the UN has been teaching us and what international conventions are pushing for. That is why it is impossible for us to recognize a government that is not educating half of the population. It is not allowing 50% of their population to speak or sing or be heard in public. It's denying half of their population to move freely unless they are with a man. They cannot be active in many areas of life, of society, of justice. That is why we are here today, because gender apartheid must represent a strong signal by the international community, Italy included, and Italy can play an international role to protect and safeguard human rights and reaffirm these rights. Some situations, such as these, cannot be accepted by the international community. I will stop here, and I will leave the floor to my colleague in charge of the international campaign. Thank you, Ms. Lanzoni, and I would now leave the floor to Ms. Azadat Raz Mohammed, who is with us online in video conference.
Non so se ci sente.
If you can hear us, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Yes, I can hear you. Honorable members of Parliament, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. It's indeed a pleasure to speak with you all this morning from Melbourne, Australia, and I also wanted to thank you all for giving this opportunity to us to present our case and also talk about the campaign of gender apartheid. Thank you very much, the former speaker who printed a very real picture of what is happening in Afghanistan right now. So I'll quickly and very briefly go through the campaign that we are leading at the Atlantic Council, and also this campaign, I have to say that is extremely decentralized. So we do not owe the ownership of this campaign. We're just working on the legal basis and policy basis of this campaign.
Excuse me, ma'am, would you mind?
Yeah.
We need to translate. Can you speak
Sure.
slowly, please? Because otherwise our translator can't manage to translate you. Thank you.
Should I start?
Yes, please. I think our translator is having a problem with the, translation so far. Thank you.
Okay. Can I go to the first slide, please?
Okay, start again, please.
I wanted to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak with you all today, and also the former speaker who laid down the situation or what is happening in Afghanistan. I'll briefly go through the situation again to just provide a context. Of over 150 decrees that the Taliban has issued, around half of them are on the status of women, which shows that Taliban has actually planned their whole role in Afghanistan based on women's rights subjugation. Women in Afghanistan are deprived of your fundamental human rights. A woman has basically no rights in Afghanistan. They cannot practice their cultural activities, they cannot go to school, they cannot go to work, they don't have any freedom of opinion, expression, or also assembly. The Taliban has also dismantled all the Afghanistan civil laws. Italy was one of our donors who are working with us on the justice sector of Afghanistan. But Taliban has dismantled our constitution, our national laws. Our whole Ministry of Justice is now governed by Taliban mullahs or advisors who have nothing to do with civil rights in Afghanistan. Can I go to the next slide, please? As it was mentioned by the former speaker, on 21st of August, the Taliban issued a new law which states that if for urgent matters only a woman should leave the house, she should be accompanied by her male chaperone, and she should be hiding her entire body. her face and her voice should be not heard or concealed in public, which means that a woman is just a moving body with no autonomy or authority over themselves. Taliban has also recreated or re-established the Ministry of Promoting Virtue and Preventing of Vice, which means that this ministry is responsible and has the arbitrary rights to arrest any woman who they think that they do not follow the Taliban's dress code or who are not following the decrees on women, status of women. They have also said that they will re-announce the public flogging, stoning to death for certain crimes, and we have seen cases of few women who are actually being subject to sentenced to stoning to death in Afghanistan. Can I go to the next slide? The proposed definition of gender apartheid that we would like to be included in the draft Crimes Against Humanity convention that is currently at the UN, we believe that this should be translated. We are not imposing or like introducing a new definition of a crime, but we are only proposing to include gender to the crime to make it inclusive. For example, we say human acts committed in the context of an institutionalized regime of systematic operation and domination by one gender group or over another gender group, or groups committed in the intention of maintaining that regime, which is also part of the already defined crime of apartheid. And we, as it was mentioned, this convention, the draft convention, is going to be discussed at the Sixth Committee of United Nations in October, and we really hope that Italy will support the inclusion of gender apartheid, and also that the treaty will go to negotiation, and we will have the support of Italy. For the Afghan women and has actually advocated for definition or of Taliban regime as gender apartheid for decades. For the first time that the Afghan women decided or advocated for gender apartheid was 30 years ago, when the Taliban was for the first time in power. So this is the second round on. If we had defined gender apartheid and we have recognized Taliban as a gender apartheid system, I'm not sure if we would have them back in power. Can I go to the next slide? So this campaign is now supported by Nobel laureates like Malala Yousafzai, by Nargis Mohammadi, by politicians, jurists, and personalities from around the world, including Iran and Afghanistan. And maybe you can go to the next slide. As it was also mentioned, this campaign is supported by a number of United Nations mechanisms, like the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Afghanistan. If you go to the next slide, please. So the latest report of the UN Special Rapporteur's report stated that he firmly believes that gender apartheid most fully encapsulates the institutions and nature of the activities in question, and places the responsibilities of other international actors to respond appropriately in according to this view. This report was published in June, and it actually provides a lot of contextual analysis of the situation of women and girls in Afghanistan. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So far, we have these institutions, organizations. I'm not going through them, but they have supported the inclusion of gender apartheid in the draft convention, and they have also supported that the situation of Afghanistan is as gender apartheid. Can I go to the next slide, please? In terms of mapping of what we have, the support of international communities or the states, it's very important to discuss this. I think today in the Parliament of Italy is that these countries mentioned here has supported the inclusion of gender apartheid in the draft convention. This includes Afghanistan's missions in Geneva and New York, and elsewhere, Australia, Austria, Brazil, Chile, Iceland, Malta, Mexico, the Philippines, and United States. And we really hope that Italy will be one of these states supporting the inclusion of gender apartheid in the draft treaty. Can I go next, please? I'm here in front of you today this morning with two specific recommendations. First one is policy-based, and second one is political-based, because we believe that Afghanistan's situation is a multifaceted crisis. And in order to move forward, we need long-term policy and political support and engagement from the international community. Can I go next, please? In terms of policy support, we urge you and the Italy and the international community to please recognize and condemn the Taliban's establishment and deliberate entrenchment, institutionalized, systematic gender-based persecution and oppression as gender apartheid, recognize Taliban as an apartheid regime. And then secondly, to support the intergovernmental process to explicitly codify gender apartheid as a crime under international law, and then also at the United Nations in October. Can I go next, please? In terms of political support, as I mentioned, that Taliban's ideology, they base these persecutions based on their ideology. So we increasingly getting this concern from the international community that we see that some countries have normalized their relationship with the Taliban, and we're increasingly concerned about that. And we also believe that the international community is considering the situation of Afghanistan under the Taliban rule as a new normal while the gross human rights violation is taking place in the country. Therefore, I urge Italy and the international community and European countries to please do not close our embassies. We have been hearing the reports that some European countries are considering to close down or hand over the Afghan embassies in European states to the Taliban, and we really need this diplomatic engagement with the people of Afghanistan apart from the Taliban. So we urge you, please do not close our embassy, and please advocate for our rights with the other European countries not to close our embassy. We have heard that United Kingdom by end of this month is closing the Afghan embassy in London permanently. And then we have also heard that at least two European states or European countries are actually thinking to replace the Afghan diplomats with the Taliban diplomats very soon. And we also urge you the Italy and the international community, European countries, that please any political engagement with the Taliban should be based on criminal accountability for the alleged crimes that has been committed by the Taliban, and also the ongoing gender apartheid, because we believe that without accountability we will not have a sustainable peace in Afghanistan. Can I go to my last slide, please? And finally, as you know, that the International Criminal Court based in The Hague is actually investigating the situation of Afghanistan since 2006. It's one of the longest investigations in the court's history, and the international community has not been able to support these investigations very much. So we really urge the Italian government and the European Union and states to please support the International Criminal Court in their investigation of the alleged crimes committed by the Taliban and its affiliated group. In addition to that, we also hear about an imminent case against the Taliban group by at the International Court of Justice, and we hope that this is as inclusive as possible, and we really hope that we will have more victim-centric approach to this case, and the people of Afghanistan, the women of Afghanistan, are at the center of this case. And we're also right now advocating for a potential UN mechanism, investigative mechanism, to document and also to investigate the ongoing crimes that is happening by the Taliban. And lastly, we hope that the Italy and the European Union or European states actually prosecute Taliban for international crimes and for gender apartheid based on the principles of universal jurisdiction. I'll stop here, and if there's any question, I can come back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, adesso.
Thank you very much, and I'll now leave the floor to Ms. Froza Nawabi. The floor is yours.
For us to be here and talk about gender apartheid in this situation of Afghanistan. Okay, gender apartheid in Afghanistan.
Can you introduce the subject that you are...
No, it doesn't matter. Okay. Now we can see the photo. The first one is from 1967. The second one is from now. You can see the situation, the woman of Afghan situation right now. Okay. Apartheid literally is separation, and the term used to define the policy of racial segregation instituted by the white government of South Africa after World War II, which remained in force until 1993. It was declared an international crime by the International Convention on the Separation and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid, adopted by United Nations General Assembly with Resolution 3068 of 13 November 1973. The crime of gender apartheid, as John explained before, the crime of gender apartheid means inhuman acts committed in the context of an institutionalized regime of systematic discrimination, oppression, and domination by one group over another group or groups based on gender, and committed with the intention of maintaining that regime. Now, the crime against humanity. There is international treaties for the crime of genocide, torture, apartheid, and forced disappearance, but there isn't a treaty specific to crime against humanity. Yeah, genocide, torture, apartheid.
Explain this.
Okay. Women in Afghanistan, from almost everywhere to almost nowhere. You can see before August 2021, then after August 2021, there were some places, but right now, or maybe after 1 year or for the future, only they are sitting at home. Nowhere Afghan woman will be. It is from Mona Chalabi. She is an activist in the United States. She is drawing that one. Yeah. Afghanistan international commitment. Afghanistan had adopted, passed, or ratified a variety of international documents that protect women's rights and human rights, including treaties, resolutions, declarations, and conference documents. Like the CEDA, Beijing Declaration, 3025 resolution, CRC, and also ICCPR, also International Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, and also Convention Against Torture. They protect women's rights in Afghanistan. Afghan women's achievements from 2001 or even before 2001 to 2021, Afghan women made significant achievement in various fields. Dispute facing numerous challenges. There was a lot of challenges Afghan women faced before Taliban as well, but they had a lot of achievement from education, political participation, employment, healthcare, media and arts, activism, and also sport. International organization point of view about gender apartheid in Afghanistan. The first one it started from the high level of United Nations, from Mr. Antonio Guterres. He is clearly talking about in Afghanistan and presented a systematic attack on women and girls' rights and the flouting of international obligations, creating gender-based apartheid. Then the UN expert also talking about the one that in Afghanistan, Taliban educated policies and practices continued an institutionalized system of discrimination, oppression, and domination of women and girls, amounting to gender apartheid. Then Mr. Richard Bennett, the special reporter for the situation of human rights in Afghanistan, and also the special reporter for violence against women's rights, they were talking women and girls in Afghanistan on experiencing severe discrimination that may amount to gender persecution, a crime against humanity, and be characterized as a gender apartheid, as the de facto authorities appear to be governed by the systematic discrimination with the intention to subject women and girls to total domination. And also the UN Women Executive Director, she is saying the gender apartheid is suffocating the women and girls of Afghanistan. Then it seems all United Nations institutions, they are agree in Afghanistan it is gender apartheid. Right now, the discrimination against Afghan women and girls are discriminated against in many ways, just for being women and girls. The Taliban enforced their version of Islamic Sharia law. It is not the main Islamic Sharia law. It is the version of from Taliban. Women and girls were banned from going to school, studying, working, leaving the house without a male, showing their skin in public, accessing health care delivered by men or even right now by women, and being involved in politics or speaking publicly. The Taliban's human rights violation, according to a CNN report between August 15, 2021 and March 31, 2024, the United Nations documented at least 1,033 instances where Taliban officers had used violence to enforce their rules. Now the Taliban's latest restriction is the vice and virtuous law. The de facto Taliban authority right now, they publicly announced the new laws. The new laws, they told, will be a great help in the promotion of virtue and the prevention of vice. The law aims to control all aspects of the social or private life of Afghans, especially Afghan women. Now the Taliban wants that kind of things for Afghan women. You can see the situation of women. Even if they are gathering in a room without any men, they must be covered like that, completely black things. Right now, Afghanistan is the only country in the world to implement a real gender apartheid by law, which operates all women in the country regardless of their age, ethnicity, abilities, and achievements. We, as Afghan women, recommend that gender apartheid must be recognized as a crime against humanity under Article 2 of the draft article on the prevention and punishment of crime against humanity, currently under consideration by the UN General Assembly 6th Committee. The second, international community must not recognize Talib as a legitimate government in Afghanistan, and also building pathway in Italia and at the level of international community to protect those who defend human rights. Not only women's rights, all human rights. Thank you. Grazie, grazie mille.
Molte grazie, dottoressa.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nawabi, for your presentation and clear-cut points that highlight the severity of the situation in Afghanistan. We don't have any other speakers on our list, so at this point I would ask the members of our committee who would like to add something or ask questions. But before that, maybe I can add a few words after what we heard. So I would start by saying that I would like to share my solidarity with all the women and the women working in favor of women and women's rights. I think their resilience, the resilience of Afghan women, is a signal to all women, and we cannot allow this to happen. It is part of our responsibility, not only because it is a crime against those who are the victims of these actions, so Afghan women, but even as women in Italy, there can be no true equality if we cannot protect all women. We will only be truly free, and we will only truly live in a world of equality when all the women on this planet will be free to reaffirm their rights. There cannot be equality if even a single small part of this population of women cannot do this and has to continue to fight to survive. So truly, I would like to share our deepest sympathies and respect for all of these Afghan women who are fighting for our rights. Considering the situation in Afghanistan, I think that there are situations that are just as severe in other countries. For example, in Iran, the Nobel Prize winner who, from jail, from prison, asked to include gender apartheid as a crime against humanity. But we can also mention the women of Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, and other countries where there is a systemic humiliation and an attempt to annihilate the presence of women and their voices. That said, I have many questions for you. We, in our committee, have heard from other NGOs, other associations and foundations who have told us about a similarly dramatic situation, but also in a broader sense. They spoke about the economic situations, they spoke about minorities, and they told us that we either find a way to support this country without recognizing the Taliban regime, or we will reach a point where the situation will be far past any sort of recovery. I worked in Afghanistan. I don't know if you're aware, but I was there before the Taliban regime, I was there during the Taliban regime, and I was there after the Taliban took control. I was there in all of these scenarios. And I know that this population is now threatened by what was happening in the 80s and the 70s, children dying because they didn't have any sort of protection, and an entire population that is at risk of disappearing because they have no sort of protection. So my question is still, today, to this date, what does the world have to do in order to not recognize such a regime? Because it's not acceptable. Because we risk having another generation of Afghans that don't have access to education, to healthcare, to any sort of security. So what can we do more? What more can we do without legitimizing this government, this regime that is so desperately trying to suppress and oppress women? That would be my main direct question. Of course, I want to make it crystal clear that we don't want to legitimize the Taliban regime and government, but my question is, what can we do to help to support this population in this critical moment? Maybe Ms. Lanzoni or Ms. Nawabi would like to start answering this question. Thank you for this difficult question. Thank you for this difficult question. It is not always easy to have a clear vision of the gender situation in this society, and also the consequences of today's actions in this society. So how will the girls and boys currently growing up in Afghanistan, how are they going to grow up? What kind of rules and what kind of beliefs will they have? It's interesting to see how, despite the international community's attempts to mediate or dialogue in some way, there's always some difficulty that emerges because eventually some other obstacle against women or some law or some discrimination against women emerges. If we think about Sudan, the situation is similar. This discrimination is a tool used in some sort of attempt to blackmail the international community. And eventually, as we've heard, women can't even speak in public. Because at the end of the day, the problem is always man. Because women's voices can cause problems to men. So it's very interesting to look at it that way. And if we have a more forward-looking vision, in the past 5 or 10 years, this situation could even represent a reality for an entire part of the world, a geographic region of the world. That is the real problem. What are human rights actually worth? What are women worth? What is 50% of the Afghan population worth? But even Afghan men, because men can't wear jeans. They're beaten in the streets if they wear jeans. It's not only women who are being oppressed. From an economic point of view, there is a problem, and we've seen how easy it is to ignore such critical situations any part in the world. There are other regions in the world, for example, in Palestine, where humanitarian aid cannot enter, where humanitarian aid has no access to areas where people are in need. This only increases a culture of hatred. In Afghanistan, this culture is institutionalized because if new generations grow up in this culture of hate, of hatred, we can't describe it any other way, because if you're denying women the right to exist, it can only be described as hatred. This becomes a way of life for all these generations, these girls and boys that are growing up. And we interviewed about 100 girls and women, and practically all of them think about suicide every day. What kind of message will they transmit to their children, to their future generations? And we have to consider that this is a country that still has to work in an international framework. I can't believe that there is no way to negotiate with the current de facto government. I cannot accept this. I will not believe that all the countries in the world together can't do anything. It's unbelievable. I was with these women for 4 years. I've seen with my eyes the consequences of this situation. I was working with Pangea Foundation in Afghanistan, and young people who lived under the Taliban regime were incredibly conservative, even compared to the elderly, to older Afghans. It's the first time in my life that I didn't see a group of youngsters that was, forward-looking and open. They were already very conservative, and so it's clear that their future was already being defined. It was an incredible situation. Is that what we want? If we can't find a form of mediation where women are part of the society, they're not beasts, they're not animals, we cannot give up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Nawabi, you have the floor.
Really, really hard and difficult question, but I am agree with Simona Lenzoni. When we are talking about the negotiation or mediation, which kind of mediation and negotiation? Because when we are talking about Doha 3, they talk about the trade, economic, or counter narcotics. But from counter-narcotics or from economic, for Afghan people, it is so important for human rights. When a person doesn't have the food for the children, they are dying from poverty. What about the trade in Afghanistan? Then last week, the Taliban announced we have 23,000 people in the jail, including 1,000 women and 800 children. Based on which law? There is no law. Even Afghanistan doesn't have constitution. In a country without any law, how they can put the people in the jail, in the prisons? And also when they are talking, the woman cannot go outside the houses, then how are they putting the woman in jail without mahram? It is not only Afghan women in suffering. It is youth, children, disabled. You can think about the disabled women or the widow women. And also you can think about the LGBT. They have the right. No, when we are talking about the human being, we must talk about everybody, not only a part of the... For me, I lived and worked, in 30 years I worked from the Kandahar, Mazar, Bamyan, Kunduz, in any part of Afghanistan I went through my country. But right now, in point of my view, only the people is living without life. Without education, without food, without anything, so only they are breathing inside the houses. But when the international community at first they must not sit with terrorist group. For me, it's not a group, they are respecting the human being. Right now, 23 terrorist groups is active in Afghanistan, including Al-Qaeda or Daesh or at the region. But when China, Russia, and also many like Norway, Germany, even United States, they are sitting with Taliban groups. It is not a group they can believe for the negotiation or mediation. Only they are sitting for their own benefit, nothing else for Afghan people. Only the international community must think, today it is the only maybe inside Afghanistan, but for tomorrow it will be for the region, big treat. The other days will be for international community. It is not only for Afghan people. What will we increase? The illegal immigration, the terrorist attacks. Right now you will see the latest things happening in Germany, in France, in other countries. What's the consequence of the illegal immigration? Then it will be the big threat for other countries as well. But only the parliament can tell to government of even Italia or other international community, please stop talking with Taliban groups. Right now, when in this situation, if they're talking with the Taliban groups, then what does it mean for human rights, women's rights, or even human being? Because they are not thinking woman as a human. Even I studied myself Sharia law. Even OIC can ask them, in which part of Islam, in which part of even Quran, it is written like that, or in which part of Islam it's going like that. Even in Saudi Arabia, I am sure there is a lot of restriction, a lot of violation of the rights, but not like Afghanistan. We have the Turkey, Morocco, Malaysia, Indonesia, Pakistan, Iran, but not the same in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, nothing for the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Grazie molte.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nawabi. I don't know if Ms. Raz Mohammed is still online and if she would like to add something.
I just briefly wanted to include that Afghanistan is also going through one of the worst humanitarian crises. So your question about how do we engage with the people of Afghanistan without actually normalizing the relationship with the Taliban or acknowledging the Taliban as the representative of the people of Afghanistan is extremely valid point at this point. And we face this question a lot of time. It's a very difficult one as well, as my two other colleagues said. So I think for that reason, we want the international community to recognize Taliban as a gender apartheid regime. So we have this legal tool and these legal mechanisms to tackle our engagement with the Taliban, and then to the conditionality of aid that we provide for the people of Afghanistan should be based on respect for human rights and also accountability for gross human rights violation in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Non so se la collega Quartapelle voleva intervenire.
Maybe we have a question from our colleague Lia Quartapelle. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Ms. Lanzoni, Ms. Raz Mohammed, Ms. Nawabi, and thank you to the Pangea Foundation. You are precious to help us maintain a dialogue, contact with the diaspora. It's important also to protect the work that you are doing, because it is very difficult and challenging and delicate. I have a very simple question. Now, your request to support the gender apartheid within existing conventions without having to approve and ratify another convention, I think that is something that this chamber of parliament should support. And this is something that we already discussed with the Pangea Foundation, if I remember correctly. But I think that's something that we should support in any sort of initiative that our chair would like to engage in. But what is striking is the lack of any sort of change in the situation since NATO's withdrawal. It's now been 3 years. There's been no change. There's been no improvement in the situation and the condition of women. Is this possibly due to an internal condition? Very often, when these regimes become more restrictive, there is an additional oppression, maybe because it's a political situation that is supported by someone internally or externally. But it's interesting, it's important to understand why this is happening, because this work on gender apartheid is going to be very political, a political effort. And following the August 21 declaration statement needs to be, explored even by our parliament. So what is the advantage of what is happening? Thank you. I don't know if Ms. Nawabi would like to answer this question.
Allora, dottoressa Azada.
Ms. Azada, Raz Mohammed.
This question. Yes, as during Ms. Nawabi's presentation, she referred to the Doha meetings, right? So United Nations has been having a few meetings on Afghanistan in Doha, the capital of Qatar, and then the political office of Taliban is actually based in Doha, Qatar, which was a bad. I mean, when they started this office, Taliban was still very much under the United Nations, and most European countries, they were listed as a terrorist group, right? And still they are listed as a terrorist group, and then the members of the Taliban was sanctioned, they couldn't travel. So in 2009 it started that, and they wanted the Taliban to bring into negotiation with the people of Afghanistan. A lot of people in Afghanistan, including the government, protested. They want the Taliban to have a political office in Doha. But it ended actually to the normalization of international community and branding Taliban from a terrorist group to a political group, which was the start of Afghanistan's fall, the Republican government's fall. And when the United States with the Taliban actually came to deal to do this peace deal, they sidelined women of Afghanistan. They didn't include anyone from Afghanistan. There was only 3 women in the panel, and these women not actually didn't had a lot of platform to talk about anything. We were always worried about the situation of Taliban, the situation of once Taliban actually comes to Afghanistan. The international community did not listen to us. The United States did not listen to us. The United Nations did not listen to us. They said that this is Taliban number 2. This is the reformed Taliban. Afghanistan will never go back to the 90s when the Taliban was in power. But your question said that the situation is getting worse and worse after 3 years. That's exactly true. You know why that is happening? It is because Taliban is more confident now that the international community will support them no matter what they will do. Because the United Nations had 3 conferences on Afghanistan, Doha talks, and then each of these talks, the final of these talks, actually didn't include anyone from Afghanistan. They didn't excluded women from Afghanistan. They excluded civil society, human rights defenders. Some of my friends were actually invited to attend this conference, and they said, you're not allowed to attend this meeting because we only want to meet with the Taliban. So this gave Taliban a lot of confidence. As I mentioned, that now most of the neighboring countries around Afghanistan has handed over our embassies. That's why I urged the Italian government to please do not give our diplomatic representation to the Taliban. We hear that this week, actually, the United Kingdom has permanently closed our embassy in London, which actually is the true representation of the Afghan people. And now we hear that the same is going to happen in some other countries as well in Europe, probably Germany, probably Austria, and we know that the Holland embassy is already compromised with the elements of Cuba. So that's why they're getting this confident. That's why they're going. The law that they passed in August, that our voice shouldn't even be heard in public. That's the limit. The level that they have gone to, that we shouldn't be even heard in public because of the confidence that we are giving them. Women are not allowed to even work in humanitarian project, United Nations project, World Bank's project, and the World Bank and United Nations has accepted this and has actually cascaded through the Taliban limitations and said that it's okay, we will not allow any woman to work, and we just let this humanitarian aid to go to the public. But are they going to the public? Are they going to the vulnerable group? We don't know. Nobody actually goes to see if they're actually going to the public. This is giving the Taliban confidence to do this and to continue the general, to do it more systematically. And now we have Taliban's decrees as a law by the Ministry of Justice. As Khanam Nawabi, Frouzan Nawabi said that Afghanistan doesn't have any constitution. Italy, I have worked with Italian mission in Afghanistan. I have seen how much Italy invested in that, technical investment in the and also financial investment. But what happened to those investments? Nothing. We have lost all those achievements. And in the meeting, I would sit with my Italian colleagues and with Ms. Nawabi, with her colleagues, we would talk about what should we do about the role of women, because women were not allowed in the end of 90s to work by Taliban. They were banned to work, they were banned to study. And that 4 or 5 years of Taliban rule in the 90s affected that we didn't have any female professional cadre. And now we have 3 years of Taliban again. And what will happen to the next generation? Ms. Nawabi also mentioned that this Taliban is not only far away in Afghanistan, it will affect everyone in the country. 9/11, we had warned about 9/11, that such a situation will happen. Did anyone listen to us? No. And I think we're going through the same trajectory. If we, the international community, if the United Nations keeps supporting the Taliban unconditionally, and doesn't listen to us, I think we're going to be to see the repercussion of those issues again in the world. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, who you said that if there is only situation of women in one country is affected like this, the same as in Afghanistan, no woman is free. That's exactly true. That's exactly we're here. And that's exactly we want to talk to women and persons like you, politicians like you, and we urge you and we need your support to stand by the women of Afghanistan and what other countries that you mentioned in Iran and others to call for the Taliban regime as a gender apartheid. We really need the support of countries like Italy to support the inclusion of gender apartheid in the draft convention at the UN, and to lobby with other European countries to do that. We hear that one of the European countries very soon, in 2 weeks actually, I'm sorry, for my last point, in 2 weeks actually going to announce a case against Taliban. But nobody has from Afghan women have been consulted. Is this a political move, right? What is this? Nobody has been consulted with our own community, and how will that proceed? We don't know. So I think what the Taliban has continued to commit these crimes with complete impunity is the confidence that they have received from the international community, United Nations, and European countries. Thank you so much. I'll stop here.
Sì, dottoressa Lanzoni, prego.
Ms. Lanzoni would like to conclude. Thank you, Ms. Azada, for what you said. I will add something. Talibans are anti-system. They don't even consider the system that we have. They have a completely different mental approach. They will never adapt to the international system. All they're interested in is removing this label of terrorist group that they have. And every time there's a meeting, they have the certainty that the international community is listening to them, that they are gaining attention, and they continue with these activities against women. All sorts, even against heels, and there was stoning of women, something that is still ongoing, nothing new. But what is surprising is that the international community will not listen to the voices of Afghan women. They are not recognized in the way they should be. They are telling us that they are seeing their children die, but they're still telling us don't accept them. What else are they supposed to tell us? That's what's so surprising to me. Who else is going to tell us if not the mothers of these Talibans, of these people? I am always accompanied by Afghan women because here they can be heard. Because if we don't listen to their voices, it's always going to be difficult. A diplomatic approach with the Taliban must be limited in Italy and in other countries as well. Countries very often think in the short run, in the short term. But in the long term, it's going to become a problem. We have to listen to women. We have to listen to their values because they want to build a country based on these values, not values of hatred, but the values of freedom, of life. That is why we must listen to them, because they know what they're going up against, with or without money. Every day, the International Bank gives money to Afghanistan. Every single day, Afghanistan receives money from the International Bank. There's a system set up. So the money is there. And even if we think about the diasporas all over the world, they continue to give some sort of hope to their families. We have to think about the future that we want. We have to think about a future that is not going to influence that country. It's going to influence the entire international community, Italy included. So I am asking you to think hard about what is happening in this country, to think and listen to Afghan women and to what they are asking. Thank you very much to the entire delegation. what I believe is that we must work together with the entire committee. We have to work on a resolution, and we could possibly set it up, asking and draft it, asking for the government to be part of this codification of gender apartheid. We will be proactive on this, and we will keep in touch, even at UN level, as you've asked us to do. Thank you, and this hearing is